Good evening, bloodsuckers. Welcome to Killer POV. Today we're going to be talking about vampires. Welcome to Killer POV with Rob Galluzzo.
Hey.
And Rebekah McKendry.
What's up?
Who had a baby.
I did.
I think we talked
I have
about that.
created life.
That was, yeah.
Yeah, but we did talk about that last week.
I think we did that, so we're going to skip it. No more horror stories.
No more babies.
And I'm Elric Kane.
Yes, well.
So these guys asked me to do the intro, and now they already regret it. Because I already threw a little...
The driest intro ever.
I didn't know you were going to start with that vampire voice.
I know,
so.
you got to start. I think from now on we should all do a voice. Next week is Michael Kane.
I'm going to be British next week.
Yeah.
Really
there we
bad.
go. Actually, but you were doing me as an Irishman before
I was.
we were on air, which is kind of funny.
Hey, you twat. Hey, you twat. I'm Rob Galluzzo as an Irishman. Yeah.
I'm doing next week as Christopher Walken. I don't know how to do that impersation, but I'll work on it before that.
Was that Irish or Scottish?
I
can't tell what you were doing.
Should we do
from a New Zealander?
Let's do an Irish Christopher Walken. Okay. Welcome. What have you guys been doing this weekend?
I didn't really get a chance to see anything this week, but I was at Monsterpalooza this weekend. Did you go? I didn't see you there.
No, sick kid.
Didn't make it.
I was planning on Sunday.
And you didn't go either, right,
No,
Rebekah? Okay.
I have a kid.
No.
So yeah, I went to the show on Saturday, and it was bigger and better than ever. Really huge attendance. And you know what? I got to say it, and a lot of people are saying this, it's by far the best convention. Yeah. It's by far my favorite and best convention, and it's because now that I've had a chance to go to a few different shows in the last few months and compare and kind of remember what it was like. You were saying Days of the Dead last week, which was an all right show.
But you felt like it was common, like a lot of others.
It was an autograph show.
Yeah.
It was focused on that. You walk in a Monster.
Was like the focus of it is they were really trying to pump the autographs. Like they were really limiting vendors in lieu of getting celebrities there.
Yeah. And you know what? That's the thing. It's like you walk into Monsterpalooza, and if you buy a ticket for one day, which is like $20, I feel like you get your money's worth. You got the museum, you got all these amazing props. Most of the tables are effects houses and just like different techniques for effects. You see a lot of kids getting really interested in this kind of stuff. Tons of vendors that are really cool. And then, there's panels that the thing I was happy about was I did a Hatchet panel and a Holliston panel. And it was kind of our first step into bringing a little bit more modern stuff on top of the retro. Because Elliot Brodsky is the guy that came up with Monsterpalooza. He's a fellow I know from New York. And that was his focus, was always, it's got to be retro and celebrate all things monsters. So this is my chance to be like, look, this show makes me feel the way Fango conventions felt when I was 15. So why don't we inject something a little new to it? That way we could have panels that kind of reflect both sides of horror. And I think it went over great. I mean, people are having a really good time.
I cannot wait till Son of Monsterpalooza this fall so I can take my daughter. I'm just so looking forward to it.
There you go.
Well, I remember it blew me away because I think it was last year, maybe it's a combination of the last two, is like walking into a room and seeing Julie Adams from Creature of the Black Lagoon sitting next to Buzz, what's his name? The guy who played the creature in all the deep sea scenes. All the diving. I think it's Buzz something.
Rico Browning?
Yeah, he was the swimmer.
Right,
yeah.
Right, the swimmer. And so we're talking to both of them, getting autographs from them feels like, it's not like, I love I love Tom Savini, I love all these people, but it's not the same thing. This feels like this magic where it's somebody and then walking out of that room and seeing the guy who was flown in from Japan who played Godzilla. That blew my mind.
Yeah.
I couldn't even go up to him. I was that like, oh my God. It was almost like watching a moving museum.
Yeah. There's a great image,
cool.
I think, on their website, on the Facebook for it, where with that guy standing in front of that giant Kong that they always have set up, which is great. Yeah, this year they had a lot of people from Ultraman, which I'm not a big fan of, but people, it's something different and unique for it.
Right.
And the other thing I'm a big fan of is, I went to that Monster Mania a month or two ago. And one of the things that changed was that was autograph-based as well. There were a lot of vendors, but every vendor had a sign-up that said, don't take, no pictures unless you buy something. Which to me was like so odd, because when I was doing convention reports for Icons of Fright, that was kind of the deal, was to, hey, let's take pictures of everything, including the vendors, to show people what it looks like, what the floor looks like.
That is so weird, because for Fango, we do the same thing. If we do convention reports, we go around and we take pictures. And I've done Monster Mania before with Fango, and I've never seen those pictures or those signs up. I wonder what happened.
Well, I think honestly, it seems like a lot more people are focusing on spending their money on the autograph side of things. Because again, huge lines for all the Walking Dead people, not so much people spending on the floor. But you get a Monsterpalooza and they celebrate and encourage pictures and that sort of thing. So again, it's a big vibe thing. It felt it's just like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it's the best. It's the most fun I've ever had at anything to do with horror.
Yeah.
Period. Like the times have been. It's especially the first time I went.
Yeah.
Because it's completely new.
It is
and
also
art-wise. Just the art is incredible.
It is something different because most of the horror shows that I end up at Fango, it's like there's a roster of horror fans that will be at, or horror icons that will be at every single convention. You will see Tom Savini, you will see Kane Hodder, you will see, and
Sybil
it's
Danning.
Sybil Danning, yeah.
Gotta give her
you can
props.
just mark them straight off. They will be there every single time. So, and you just don't see them at Monsterpalooza, which is great.
Yeah.
What about watching? Did you have any time to watch anything?
I'm trying to think. I don't think so, to be honest. I mean, Kiss of the Damned, obviously, which we'll get to.
Right.
But no, I mean, I was pretty focused on the convention. I will say the Hatchet panel went over really well, and they showed an effects reel that kind of burned through. It was a lot of the kills from 1, 2, and then a couple from 3. So we got a little tease from that. But to me, the highlight of that. I brought AJ Bowen to this convention. He doesn't normally do conventions, and he's a little shy to it. But I was like, dude, this is what Fango shows were like for us when we were kids. You got to come. And sure enough, like within 20 minutes, he's like, this is the best convention I've ever been to.
Oh, that's awesome.
But in the effects reel, they showed his quote unquote sex death scene from Hatchet 2. And it killed so hard with that audience. Like every line that he said, just huge laughs.
That's awesome.
So it was a lot of fun to watch that with him because I don't think he got to see it when it played theatrically out here.
Oh, right.
So that was cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I always forget he's in that scene. What about you? Do you see anything?
I watched old stuff just because I've seen 4 a.m. more times in the past 3 weeks since I gave birth than I ever did like when I was an undergraduate in college or anything like that. So because I'm now spending my nights wide awake, laying in bed, listening to, trying to soothe the infant, I've been watching things on Netflix.
Oh.
So it's kind of whatever I can pull up with one hand on the remote, that's what I've been watching. So I watched Watcher in the Woods again. I watched The Stuff. So yeah, I've just been going through my Netflix streaming. So, yeah.
Are you eating it or is it eating you? I should try to work in taglines as questions every episode.
That's fun.
So, yeah, it's just been, but I've had a lot of fun with Netflix. Like I never realized how many horror films are on the Netflix streaming. So it's making me think my $8 a month is worth it.
Yeah, just don't tell Mike Williamson.
I also watched Serpico, which isn't horror, but I like it more than I did the first time I saw it.
Was that on Netflix?
No, that was Hulu. It was on one of the streaming things I have, Vudu, something like that. So
yeah, I also have to bring up, by the way, another thing I did this weekend. Every other week, my roommate likes to go. We like to go to Fry's in Burbank, the electronics store.
I love that place.
They have the oddest sales on the weirdest stuff. So, and I usually tweet about it while I'm there. So the score this time was inexplicably they had hundreds of copies of the Masters of Horror Blu-rays, $2 a piece.
Oh my gosh.
So it cost me $8 for the complete Masters of Horror Season 1 on Blu-ray.
And that's 2 of them are worth that price. The Black Cat. Love Black Cat by Stuart Gordon.
That's like 50 cents an episode.
That is. I love Joe Dante's Homecoming.
In high def.
I like,
but there's a few that aren't.
Ones. I like Dance of the Dead, which nobody else liked, but I really liked the story.
I don't like that one.
I did. The story's by Richard Matheson.
Yeah.
So it's a great story, and it's Tobe Hooper.
There's a few clunkers in there. But that's,
but some are good.
Yeah, some are good.
And the other thing I saw there that was amazing, and I had to tweet it, there was a stack of Blu-rays of Serbian Film, and they were $5.
Serbian Film is now in the discount aisle. That is
not
so
even
crazy.
in the discount. It was just there in the horror section. And I just was shocked because when I worked at Amoeba, it was like, it went for like $20, $30 and it was pretty expensive. And you had to physically come to the counter and we had to check your ID before we gave it to you.
Really?
So I love the fact that any kid could just grab it at Fry's for $5. And I stared at it for a while. I watched it once. I'll never watch it again. And of course I bought it for $5.
Of course. I still have my copy.
It's like the forbidden fruit in my collection, and it's unopened.
Was this version the first? Because the history behind Serbian Film, it was, of course, banned over in Europe, and there was a whole bunch of child pornography charges brought up against it. When Invincible Films released it here in the U.S., they cut 50 seconds worth of frames from it, and that was the first release. And it wasn't until about 6 months after that they went back and said, okay, you know what, the fire, it's not burning as bad. Let's go ahead and release it in its original version. And so they did the original cut release, or the edited one, and then they did another one that was unedited. So which one did you get?
Well, it says unrated. And that's the version I saw also claimed it was unrated,
They were
although I heard
all
it
unrated.
was, yeah, although I heard it was missing a few frames from it, which I don't want those frames.
Yeah, it's kind of the frames that were cut. I mean, you really don't see anything. I watched the two back to back. Of
course
it was
you
just
did.
kind of like, of course I did. Yeah. So I watched the two back to back and was just like, I don't get it. I don't see what the issue was to begin with, because the frames that they cut, you didn't really see anything anyway. But whatever makes them sleep better at night. But even still, just having that edited version and then releasing the crazy unedited version with 6 extra frames in it was enough to drive sales like mad.
Yeah.
I'm so hardcore I fell asleep during it.
Wow.
That's how hardcore. And I woke up, spoiler, please turn off right now. If you're I'm going to give some sort of a revelation in here, am I allowed to do
Don't
that?
spoil Serbian film.
Well, there's a part in there where something major happens with children. Anyway, there's a pedophilic
There's a
kind of
couple
thing.
of those, yeah.
And I woke up right when that was happening, and I looked at it, and I watched for about a minute, and I was like, and went back to sleep. So instead of shocking me, it bored me. I just didn't buy the acting. The acting style was so... the main guy was great, but the filmmakers were so fake that it ruined the whole film for me. I was just like, how can anyone take this seriously when they're all cartoon characters? Had they played that real, it would have been so dark.
Yeah.
See, that's how Human Centipede was for me, where I thought that the main guy reminded me of this villain from a Nintendo video game that I can't even remember. But,
he was. I think he was meant to be mad scientist, kind of jokey, for sure.
But yeah, Serbian Film, when I first saw it, I thought it was really, it was very prettily shot. Prettily is not we know
what you meant.
It was very lovely. Shooting.
She hasn't got her PhD yet, but so when she does, her grammar will instantly improve.
Prettily.
She's just waiting to get better at this.
I'm going to get gooder.
I didn't watch much either because besides the film we're going to talk about tonight, but I've been reading that book, which is, I'm going to highly recommend it. I think it's the best thing I've picked up this year. The person Killer Gianotas.
She works for Fangoria.
She does. Killer Gianotas. Is that how you say her last name?
It's actually Kayla.
Oh, Kayla. Her book, House of Psychotic Woman, is I think it's it might become my favorite horror film or just film book by an academic, and the reason is academics always write such dry shit about movies, and what she chose to do is she chose to basically put all her psychological defects and all the problems she's had growing up, foster homes, sexual abuse, all of that into a book where she then talks about the movies she saw at the time as she developed. So she then compares storylines of things like Possession, Entity, those kind of movies to what she was going through herself, and she can write. She can really write, and those things combined. I'm only a quarter way through. Those things combined, though, are fantastic. And there's also a lot of films I haven't heard of. They're not all horror, but a lot of it is cult and horror. And they combined it like a little Molotov cocktail. It's really good. And so far, I'm I haven't read a book from that kind of world for a while that's been wow, this is stuff I didn't know. That's a problem. Shock Value, I liked reading that about Carpenter and that, but it felt like it was stuff I already knew, putting a little spin on it. So you can get it on Amazon. I hope we can get her as a guest at some point, because I think it would make for a really interesting discussion.
She is in Canada, but next time she's out here, I actually I took her to Jump Cut one day.
Oh, cool.
You were there. You met her, but I think it was before the book came out, so you didn't even realize.
That's high.
You always are. Elric's such a junkie.
On spicy mayo. So that's what I was reading. So I didn't have as much time to watch stuff, but I actually did rewatch, because we're going to be talking about vampire films, I did rewatch Midnight Sun. Did you ever see that?
No, I don't think so.
FEARnet premiered it, but it was before you were over there, maybe last year. It was an indie vampire film that we had the director on Inside Horror once, and I really like it. It's a really nice little indie vampire film where it's just like a guy works nights at I think it's like a hospital or something. I can't even remember what kind of building it was. He just eventually meets a girl and gets bitten and basically is slowly becoming maybe a vampire. It's one of those ones where it's not 100% and you're going through, but it's a slow burn.
Oh, realistic. I remember the trailer to this, and it did look really interesting.
It's good. It's super indie, but I actually think it's a nice little film. It's it kind of answers one of the questions which I was wanting us to get into a little later, which is kind of how do you resurrect the vampire film, or is it even possible to make a scary vampire film now after it's been so muzzled kind of by Twilight? And not just Twilight. I was thinking about this on the way here, realizing True Blood has muzzled it as much as Twilight
Vampire
has.
Diaries.
Yeah, it's getting just used to them as household characters that you could just be like, oh, hey, what's up, vampire? You know what I mean? And so they'll be saying, hopefully once we bring in our guests, we can also kind of delve into that area. But
Sure.
Yeah, vampires have really drifted much more away from the scary monsters of the night into much more kind of the household drama.
Yeah.
They're very soap opera-ish. But then
Harlequin.
again, they were that way in the 70s with Dark Shadows. I mean, Dark
Right.
Shadows wasn't scary. It was like a Harlequin romance novel. It was a soap opera.
Right.
So, I mean, they've been there before, but I think that we're really pushing them now
Well,
into
yeah.
the teenage
Right.
one, too.
Right. So should we get the guests into for this
Yeah,
part of the
yeah,
discussion?
let's
do
jump in
it.
on Yeah.
Okay, so we were just basically discussing how the vampires have kind of been muzzled over the years and gone really down the road of the Harlequin, like tween characters between Vampire Diaries,
True
Twilight, True Blood. Even True Blood started with this really interesting concept and premise, but as it kept going and going, it became more routine, and vampires are kind of a little too prolific. So,
And I take it back even a little bit further into like Buffy and Charmed.
right,
We're
right.
introducing it.
Right.
But aren't all those for kids?
I don't know, but they have. I mean, a lot of them are adult fans. True Blood.
Well, what does
Yeah.
that mean?
Yeah, kids.
I mean, for sure, Twilight's for kids. No?
Or do you mean
Twilight,
mental
definitely.
lightweights?
Hold on, are we back on
I
air?
don't know what I mean. No, I mean, I took my daughter to see Twilight, and when you have a daughter and you have to take her to movies for that
Right.
age, it's just like, kill me now.
Right.
And Twilight was like, fine. I mean, it was for kids. It was for my daughter. I don't know how
Right.
old, 12 at the time or 11.
Right.
I mean, I was just like, okay, well, I'd rather see that than some of the other things that she was taking
Right.
me to see. But I mean, people get super mad at Twilight, but like, it's for kids.
Right.
Like, why are you going to
Well, I
get
think
mad
it
at
becomes-
like Sleeping Beauty?
It becomes part of the culture, though, and it wipes out a lot of other stuff. You know what I mean? So it is,
Yeah.
even if it is for kids, the popularity of these things make a character or a creature so prolific.
For
that
sure.
What else is left? Like, you look at a vampire, like, a good question is, like, vampires scary? Like, and so are we good, Justin? Okay. Sorry,
Okay,
that's not-
great.
I'll also say we're talking to Xan Cassavetes.
That's what I was asking. I was like, shouldn't we intro them, Justin?
It's casual.
And Taylor
Gianotas.
Oh, okay, I'm glad I didn't try that at that time. That would have gotten ugly. And this is the writer director of Kiss of the Damned and the editor of Kiss of the Damned. All right, there we go. So we're talking about perfect people to come and talk about vampire films. But yeah, no, I think it's saying more about like the cultural impact. The zombies have kind of gone that way before too, right? Where it's become more comic. And Zombieland, and then Walking Dead kind of brought it back to people, maybe more realist approach. Right. I mean, what would we have to do to make vampires terrifying again? Or is it only in childhood that they can be that way?
Are vampires ever really terrifying?
I don't know. As a kid, I was.
I don't know, because I was as a kid, but vampires, they always are a different type of monster, because the vampire, even back to like its origin, has a romantic side to it. It's always much more of an alluring, romantic, attractive monster than, say, like Frankenstein or the creature from the Black Lagoon. It's not just a mindless killing machine.
But then not Nosferatu. When we go to Nosferatu or Klaus Kinski's Nosferatu, or any of them, they're like repugnant, grotesque, like creatures.
I love
with him.
Kinski's
Yeah.
Nosferatu.
Yeah, I
He's
like
pretty
the
hot.
original. I mean, he's not
Yeah.
hot, but I mean,
Right.
But you feel
Yeah, there's this-
you feel sad for him,
Right.
Yeah,
you
there's
know?
a certain like emotional component or whatever that goes with those vampires, like Klaus Kinski's too.
Yeah.
That's like not necessarily horrifying or whatever, but you definitely feel for him more than like a Frankenstein or whatever.
I felt for Frankenstein, too.
yeah, I felt for him. He threw the little girl in.
I guess they're romantic because they're alone, right?
Yeah.
They're damned to be
Yeah,
alone.
they're being a monster is
Right.
a tragedy in a way.
Right.
Which is cool and brings up a lot of more philosophical, opportunities rather than just, I mean, if you're going to go straight scary, sociopath, that's scary.
Right. Yeah, something that can really happen in your world, right?
But I mean, all vampires through most of film, they've always had this like weird romantic side. I mean, even if you're looking into the things that did scare us when we were kids, like Lost Boys. I mean, David, the lead vampire in that, Kiefer Sutherland, was supposed to be incredibly sexy. And then you have the tormented Michael.
What are you laughing at?
He had that bleach blonde hair. How's that scary? It's like, I'd
Good
laugh him out of
spiked
the room.
mullet going on. It was hot.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, like Fright Night, I'm staring at Rob's wearing a Fright Night shirt. I mean, the thing that made Fright Night so scary is the guy moved in next door was alluring to the mom, the sexy man next door. So there's always that kind
Right.
of sex appeal element. I mean, it's Interview with a Vampire.
It's like this human element with vampires, meaning like they can talk and be complicated and sophisticated, whereas like werewolf tales, like they're just
Right.
monsters. Zombies, they can't communicate or anything. So in terms of like storytelling, vampires can be the closest to humans than any other monster. It's the easiest for them to kind of,
blend in.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And they have eternity, so they can actually be very successful potentially.
Yeah.
And it's as if they were, not molested, but victimized, and that's how they became that. So there's part of them that's still the old person, and then the tragedy of having to go on in eternity, and the redundancy and the boredom, and it's tragic, but it's also sexy because they're always beautiful and they have a lot of money, and they don't always have a lot of money, but my vampire
resources
discloses that they had stocks for whatever, or bought property from the beginning of time.
Right. I think when they turn into bats is sometimes when it falls apart. Like sometimes it's that moment where you're like, the bat, really the bat.
Really?
Like the mist I like this thing about the elements I like it when they're connected to the elements, but when they're connected to like, I'm a bat now, or or in Dario Argento's case, I'm a giant
I'm a grass mantis. Oh my gosh.
Which was still the weirdest clip I've ever seen in my life.
When I saw that screening, the audience laughed out loud at the mantis part.
Bugs life.
When he became a mantis, you're like, wow, more mantis.
And
more
then he
mantis.
bit the guy's head off and spit it against the wall, and you're just, do I take this seriously still?
No, that was pretty weird, but it was kind of weird. What are some? Well, let's go around everyone. I'm curious. Favorite vampire films, because I think they're so different. I think there's from movies like Near Dark and Fright Night, or one thing to things like Daughters of Darkness, Gene Roland. They're totally opposite sides of filmmaking. I'm curious.
For me, I like to go for a fairly unknown one, but one of my favorites is Larry Fessenden's Habit, which I think is one of the most realistic, straightforward vampire movies ever made.
I always cite that too. I love that film.
You're making a face.
No, I'm not. I love Larry Fessenden.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Back when he looked like young, crazy Jack Nicholson back then. Like
exactly.
He looked,
Late 90s, I guess that movie was. But I love that one. I mean, it just takes place in New York. It's also very, it feels very New York.
I love the urban feel of it, though. I mean, because like the city is always, whenever you have New York City in a film, it's always just as much a character as anybody else in there. And that's really true in Habit.
Yeah. And I mean, the reason I love that one in particular, which, kind of plays into Near Dark, even though it's a little more defined that they are actually vampires. And Larry tends to do this with all his movies. He can't give you a clear-cut answer of if a supernatural thing is happening.
He does that in Wendigo. He does it in Last Winter. You don't get any answers.
He could just be hooking up with a really freaky girl that likes to bite him. But we, the audience, are like, dude, she's a vampire. She's drinking her blood. But yeah, I love Habit, and I don't think it gets enough credit for being one of the better ones.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
Never saw it.
Check it out.
No.
It's awesome.
Got some work to do. It sounds really good.
It is good. That's a good one. What about you, Becca?
Well, I have a couple. My all-time favorite is one that I hope you've seen, Elric, Perfect Creature.
Oh, no. Oh,
I've got
bad news for you. I hate that.
I hate that movie.
With a fiery pit of passion.
Oh, bless
But it is from
me.
New Zealand, so that's cool.
And the effects are done by Weta, and I really like it because it came out in 2006 at a time when there was not a huge amount of vampire films coming out, but it completely took the premise behind vampires and reshaped them. And it set itself in an alternative reality where vampirism is a genetic defect, but the people who have it are worshipped as gods. And their role is not to drink the blood of humans, but to protect humans. And people will donate blood like they're giving communion to their gods. And I loved the whole setup of it. I thought it was so smart.
It was really ambitious.
Yeah.
I liked that about it, but I just didn't buy it.
It was. And it was also the whole environment of it was a very steampunk setting. And this is before steampunk became like the cool thing to do. So I really like Perfect Creature. I also, has anyone seen The Reflecting Skin? Okay, that's another one.
That's a great movie in general. I always forget it's got any vampiric.
You got me stumped on both of those.
Yeah, Viggo Mortensen.
You guys are so for real.
That's
we're hardcore.
Philip Ridley, right? The director.
And what's scary in The Reflecting Skin, it's about a young boy growing up in, I don't even know what state it is, but it's like Midwest, nothing but fields of grain. And
it was shot in England, so they're just kind of making a nebulous
like the
America.
Terrence Malick vampire movie.
It pretty much was. Yeah.
It's just this nebulous of grain, and it's always this really, really bright sunlight, and it's about a little boy who is completely fucked up in his head. Like, they spend most of their time blowing up bullfrogs, and then he becomes convinced that the weird woman living next door is a vampire. but all the time there's a serial killer that's actually like hunting children in the town.
And a black car just pulls up and then you disappear.
And then the kids disappear. But it's so bright. It is the brightest horror movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, he was marked. After that, he was like on the path to, this is the next director to watch. This guy's going to make these incredible films, and just never.
He never did.
It never merged.
Else.
I don't know. He made a British film a couple years ago called Heartless, about a guy with a stain on his face, and it was all set with like weird creatures in a building, but never connected. But it's so artistic. It's
Reflecting
gorgeous,
Skin. It's not a casual movie to watch. There's not a single moment in that movie that you're not uncomfortable.
Yeah,
that title is so cool.
It's really good.
Very hard, but that's how they say that they're determined that they're vampires, is when she emerges, that she glows, and it's just because she's like a hermit and stays inside all the time. But and it never is really revealed, how the killers are working, and there's so many questions. So, but that's one of mine. And then I also put in Insatiable, which I don't know if anybody has seen. That's another kind of obscure one. What year is that? 2007. And that one stars Sean Michael Flannery, and it was kind of
Boondock Saints.
Yeah,
3.
it was post Boondock Saints. And what it is he falls in love with a vampire and decides that he wants to try to save her. So he catches her and keeps her in a cage in his basement. And falls in love with her. And it's also got Michael Biehn in it, who plays a vampire hunter who's trying to convince him to kill her.
And he's not in many movies.
And it's awesome. He's not in everything.
Yeah, he's not in everything anymore.
But it's just a really cool concept, because it's much more about the caged animal and the man who falls in love with her. And he, after a while, is struggling with bringing her blood. And so it's just good. And then throw back to the 60s with Fearless Vampire Killers, which is about the most normal one on my list. So.
I was going to say that too.
All the fast forward parts. Anything with Polanski acting, to be honest, I haven't seen him give a bad performance. He's always really good.
He's really good.
Yeah, he's a good actor. Should we just guess yours from your film? Could we have a session where we we buzz in?
Well, listen, I'm not even going to pretend that I'm even anywhere in the league of knowledgeability about vampire
Don't worry, you don't have to show
But you
off.
know what? I'm not insecure about it. I'm like, I'm happy that you guys are better than me here.
No, just off the top, I felt like Daughters of Darkness, which is one of the best looking horror films I've ever seen.
Yes.
It had and Delphine Seyrig, it felt like she was being channeled at times, because she is just as sexy as hell in that movie. There's a movie I wasn't sure if you would have known, Valerie in Her Week of
Wonders.
Sure.
I wrote that one down too.
Yeah.
I didn't. It wasn't so much that I saw that in your film, but it felt, it could be in that kind of mythic world.
Yes.
But the first thing about your film that struck me was that, even though it had, because I've read reviews that are already, Gene Roland and all this stuff. But the thing about his films is the pacing is so tough. Like, as beautiful as a Roland film is, there's always something about them. There's not necessarily a tension building. It's more just, it just goes.
You just wait for something to happen. So when it finally does, it's like, oh, this is great.
Yeah,
it's so action-filled, and it isn't.
I like looking at them more than I like watching them, but I felt your film was completely modern. That's what I loved about it. It felt like it had shades of these films, but it was just very now contemporary and didn't drag in that way. It was energized with erotic energy throughout.
Well, I definitely was not trying to copy Jean Roland.
Right.
In fact, I just had only seen Shiver of a Vampire when I shot the movie. I hadn't seen any other Jean Roland movies. While I was editing, I was eavesdropping on you talking about Netflix and having kids. Like, I'd sleep with my kid in the bed, whatever, and be like headphones, and they have all the Jean Roland movies.
Yeah, they just put
all
them
of
up.
them.
Yeah.
So this doesn't end. I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. I just gave birth 3 weeks ago. So
my kids are 12 and 15, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh God.
So, but I mean, that's where it is. I think watching Jean Roland movies is an acquired taste. Right. It's like liking sushi or cilantro or something, but once you get it and once it makes sense to you, it doesn't feel like that anymore. Of course, there are some that are more whatever than others. And my favorite of his movies aren't his vampire movies. My favorite of his is Night of the Hunted and Grapes of Death.
Haven't seen that.
And both of them have to do with, people sort of losing their identity and losing their minds. One becoming zombies and the other being affected by this nuclear waste product. And it's really scary that your soul disappears before you stop dying. And it's not only scary to watch, but it's scary to think about, but what does that mean?
What was the name of that one again?
Which one? Night of the Hunted?
Night of the Hunted.
Yeah,
with Brigitte Lahaye, or whatever you pronounce her name, the most genius actress ever, best performance ever. I'm sure someone would disagree, but whatever.
Yeah.
I love, as far as vampire movies, of course, what you mentioned, But I don't know if Trouble Every Day is a vampire movie, but
Yeah, I mean it's got a
I guess if you got to say your ones that were sort of metaphoric.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's a funny one because I wrote that one down too because the soundtrack of that also and maybe the ambiguity in that because that's super ambiguous. Yours isn't anywhere near on that level of ambiguity, but yeah, Claire Denis' soundtrack, the Tindersticks did that, and it has it really like I felt the same way about your film. The music really helped give it this whole other level. But that film is because I think more like Habit, like the one Rob's talking about. Beatrice Dahl is the actress, right?
Oh,
she's a vampire, regardless. Even if it's only in her mind, she's tearing people up and covered in blood in that film, But all the other stuff's so interesting. Vincent Gall, it's a weird movie, but it's never been available here. So where I came from, that was just like a normal DVD on the shelf. It's never come out in America, ever.
Yeah,
I've
never seen that. And if there's usually an obscure horror film out there, I've seen it.
It's only a few. I put it on the list for you for that book.
You haven't seen.
The soundtrack to that is just so good. But it is a very interesting movie. It's like it doesn't follow a clear path, but none of her films do really.
Yeah, and a lot of it's at stake emotionally. I like that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I love Nosferatu with both Nosferatus and Murnau and the Herzog. But I really love the Herzog because I'm obsessed with like color and sound design, and those performances are ridiculous. And I love the idea that this guy's just so sick, and every time he bites somebody, it's a perversion, like a compulsion. I remember these guys that were like cannibals in Germany, remember? And one guy ate the other guy, and he signed something.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a trial.
I remember that news story.
There's even a movie about it. They made a movie.
And I remember this one quote that the guy had when he was like on the stand. He said, "I've wanted to eat people I'm 45 years old. I've wanted to eat people every day since I was 8, and I've resisted and resisted and resisted. And then one day I just couldn't fight it anymore. The opportunity was there, and it was so touching to me in some stupid way. I'm sure it doesn't.
Well, because the other guy wanted to be eaten, so
sure,
it's got
but
that.
I don't want to eat people,
right.
So I'm not in that position,
Right.
But it's the same like Klaus Kinski, in Nosferatu, he had that like resist, but then the perversion of it just became like, and he regarded it as a perversion, so it was even more, scary and horrifying.
Right.
I love that movie. I love Klaus Kinski.
Yeah.
But I love that the best.
He's a vampire in everything he's in.
And I mean, sorry, this is super obvious, but The Hunger. Yeah. I mean, the openings part of The Hunger is the most ridiculously superior opening of so many.
Yeah, that's pretty fantastic.
Ridiculous.
Have you ever seen the Abel Ferrer one, The Addiction?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's one that was on my list where I was just like, that's a really interesting little movie. I just remember the scene where they bring out over all the academics, and she has this like soiree with all the academics and all these like
that's the best scene.
Stiff PhD type people, and then the vampires come out and kill all of them, and you're like, that's how you do it.
After she's studying, the Vietnam War and all the bodies,
really
like
funny.
Human on human carnage, and then they're just
it has a good sense of humor, that film, but it's also it's well made. It's a nice tight. It's like Habit. It almost feels like an extension of Habit's world, I think.
And New York again.
Yeah, New York playing a character. Yeah. What about you, Taylor?
I mean, probably like Xan was saying, like both of the Nosferatu movies, I think, are just masterful. Both like the original one and like definitely the Herzog one is just incredible. Not just for like what it's saying, but the way that the mood is set up through the whole thing, and like the score also. And the same thing with Trouble.
The score is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean I think Popol Vuh did that, and it's definitely like one of the best ones they did for him. And it's like all part of creating this tone or this vibe that's like you're feeling it with not only the human characters, but also feeling like the emotions that go with the Nosferatu character too. And I think it's the same type of thing set up in like Trouble Every Day with like the Tindersticks score, where it's like every time when I think about that movie, I'm thinking about the score too, because it's so intrinsically a part of the emotional component, I guess, of the movie. And
right, like they're not separate elements.
It's definitely one. And there's great scores that go to movies, but when I think back on them, I'm not necessarily like hearing the score in my head. But that's definitely one of them. Both of those movies, Nosferatu and Trouble Every Day, for sure.
Yeah. So favorite Dracula is Klaus. Would you say if you had a favorite Dracula? Is he even Dracula? Well, he's Nosferatu, but I guess that's an extension.
That only happened because of a lawsuit.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
for sure. My favorite is Klaus. Klaus is the most bizarre. I mean, that performance is out of hand to me.
Yeah.
It's the most fascinating thing ever. I could watch it a million times.
I thought Willem Dafoe did a good job in the Shadow of a Vampire playing that character.
I wrote that one down.
Yeah, he did. I mean, that was great. It was a comic movie, but he did a great performance with it, I think. I love. I've been telling them all day that my favorite line comes from a vampire film, and I will do it now. And you tell me the blood of these whores is killing me.
Oh, wait, what is it? Blood of these horses. It was on Dina's answering
My favorite
machine.
line in any movie.
Is it Udo Kier?
It's Udo Kier. Paul Morrissey's, it's not a great movie by any stretch,
Dracula.
but my God, is that a great scene. It's just like, he's just so upset. And he's so like, him and Joe D'Alessandro. Joe D'Alessandro is so New York in that movie. You're watching a period piece set on like some estate, and then he's like, yeah, you know what I mean? And then this crazy, I don't know, it's one of the worst great movies I could think of. I have, you know what my favorite, I think Cronenberg's Rabid, if that would be classified, is just a genius reinterpretation of that. That's actually scary. But weirdly, if like for classic, I really like Salem's Lot, and I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's because the scary, weird looking vampire.
Yeah, that scared the shit out of me when I was a
too.
kid.
Yeah.
Just the chomping after the burning and the little kid tapping on the glass.
Yeah, that's a scary scene.
I think
oh my
that-
God,
that
that scared
scarred-
the crap out of me.
I think that kid tapping on the window scarred all of us for life.
Dave does that all the time.
Yeah,
He'll
it's
go out
creepy.
on the porch to smoke a cigarette, and then he'll sit there and tap on the window to come back in. And,
That memory. And you know what? I own it. I've been scared to revisit it now as an adult because I'm nervous it's not going to hold up or be as scary as I remember.
I haven't watched it
Yeah,
since I was a kid.
it scared me so bad. I haven't had the courage to revisit it.
I know that's the worst.
But
When
I've
you're
heard
like, this
people
isn't
say
so bad.
it's not as bad as you remember, and it's like, oh no, then maybe I'll just let it sit on my DVD shelf.
Yeah.
if
That's
the
what
case.
happened to me with Audrey Rose. I was trying to tell people to watch it, and they were like, "This sucks." And then I watched it again. I'm like, "Ooh, doesn't really scare me as much as
Didn't
it
I
did.
like 3 episodes ago talk about that? I had just seen The Haunting of Julia, and it blew me away. And I was like, oh my God. And then Netflix said, oh, you'll like Audrey Rose. And I hadn't seen it. And I was like, hell yes. And I turned it, like the opening scene's great. And then after that, it's like, oh my God, this is boring. Like nothing happened. Just Anthony Hopkins in the rain looking serious.
That actually happened to me with Let's Scare Jessica to Death, which is
really?
actually a vampire film where one of the horror fans that we hang out with a lot, Dick Grunnard, who is one of the writers on Adventure Time, had really, it's like his favorite film. And he was like, you have to see it. And I watched it and I was like, oh, man, they kill people with crop dusting. That's epic. So, but it is technically a vampire film, I think, because they show up at the end and they're rather vampiric.
So choosing worst is easy, though. Like everyone's seen Billy the Kid versus the Vampire, I'm sure, right?
Dracula 2000 for me.
Oh, really? Dracula? All right. Yeah.
That was pretty rough.
Whatever the sequels were to Dracula 2000.
Oh, yeah. They
made
kept
like a
that
2 and a
going,
3.
didn't they?
Yeah.
What was the one that it wasn't Beyonce? It was another female
God.
rap star that they put in it. It was like the Queen of the Damned. Or
Oh, yeah,
something.
yeah.
Aaliyah.
Aaliyah, that was it. That one I did
never saw
not
that
enjoy.
one. I didn't see that.
I didn't see it either, but that's the first movie I want to see.
It's on your queue right now.
For sure.
I remember at the time I wasn't working for Fango, but I was still a reader, and there was a huge article on it, and then I actually saw it and was like, man, this sucks. So.
I've never seen it, but it's really popular. Because I remember when I worked at the video store, it sold every single day.
Are you
We'd sell a
serious?
copy of Queen of the Damned. I'm like, what the hell is it with this movie?
That in the room, you get the weirdest people in Amoeba.
Yeah. Strange people.
I guess all of this is kind of leading towards the film itself. I'm wondering, did you start like knowing all this, even if you weren't the biggest horror fan, or I don't know what your background was, but how did you approach it? Did you go, I'm going to come up with a really interesting story first that's like human story, and then I'm going to add horror elements, or did it just all kind of come together?
How it all came together was that somebody took me to this guy's house. They supposedly wanted to shoot like a $50,000 horror film. It was all a big misunderstanding because he had another house that was like a shack, and that's what he meant. But there was a misunderstanding. So I got taken to this estate on this lake in Connecticut, and I was walking through trying to think of something that, that could cost $50,000. It would be okay. And it was above, this had this steep lawn that went down to this lake. And if you went down to the lake and looked up, the house looked very sinister. And it was in this nature setting. And the house was like very unnatural, but nice, really nice. But it was unnatural. And I just started thinking about basically what was, the whole movie is really for me about what's natural and what's not natural, like sexuality versus like, intellectualism and these sisters and this love. What is even natural and not natural about love? What's
attraction,
illusion,
like, is really
and what's
strong.
real? Anyway, I started thinking this house seemed like such a transitional place, and I started thinking about a chick who was lonely and maybe lived forever, and how you keep moving even though you're, life is eternal and there's permanence. It's just there can't be any permanence of your home. You get bored. The redundancy is killing you. So you end up in these transitional places. And this house made me think of that and this girl wandering around. And of course, this sister who comes in and just calls out her hypocrisy and is just completely primal and not pretending that, she's anything else.
Like a normal sister. Like any sister would do.
Yeah, like, the half of all of us probably,
right, yeah.
And then the other half is like, no, I must be this. And, both are probably bullshit or without the other one, without acknowledging the other one.
I like that the key attraction scene happens in the video store. Did that jive with your vision of the world?
That's where you fall in love, right?
Nerds unite.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. What about what about the actual horror elements? Like, was it instantly like, oh, I'm also interested in referencing any other horror films, or did it come just directly from?
I didn't try to reference any other horror films. But I mean, I guess when there's not that many horror scenes in the movie,
right?
It's basically people doing stuff to themselves or being horrified by their own behavior and trying to resist doing something they shouldn't and doing it. So that part of it is creepy and freaky to me. But I guess, it was really low budget. There wasn't a lot of room to do anything, super duper as far as the scary scenes. I remember this one scene where Mimi chases down this girl, like she was waiting for a cab, like somewhat away from the estate in the woods. And I was like, can we have a split screen so she can chase her and one's in slow motion and one's in fast motion? And that was just way out of the question.
You were trying to define
so Roxanne just puts on Roxanne Mesquita, like this beautiful, like, sort of like just very thin and feminine actress. Like I wouldn't think she was like super like athletic in any way. French and everything, puts on a pair of kicks and just is like, I'm doing this. And she ran so fast that it was the scariest thing that I've ever seen. It freaked me out. But I mean, I was thinking like, it is very Friday the 13th-ish or something, but then you put that music that's so not that and you shoot it in a sort of a way. But I didn't have a problem. I mean, I'm a woman of a certain age and I grew up in the 80s, a lot with those kind of movies. So I didn't mind, especially I liked putting something like that flavor into something that otherwise might have been like, ooh, it's arty or something,
Yeah, it does feel like a mixed.
I really don't like sticking to one thing or trying to belong to one thing. And so basically it was just a story and we just shot it and we never shot listed anything. It was basically instinctive. Go out in the woods. We don't know what we don't know how we're shooting the scene. And, you get the people and everything, and you think of what would look the most, missile blasty, and you do it. But, the vampire movies I told you I liked. I love those. I also love, like, Visconti, weird, opulent, decadent stuff like that. And I love, Nick Rogue, as we were talking about, and Zalowski.
Well, that also goes towards the editing as well, like the aesthetic of how the film's put together,
That
was something.
But it was also, in my mind, kind of shitty.
Oh, yeah, was it?
But, I mean, he's my favorite of all time. Bad Timing is my favorite movie ever.
Yeah, it's always been in my top 5 for my whole life.
Some people really hate it.
Oh, every time I loan it to someone, they tend to think it's like really perverse.
Please.
It's the most Freudian film ever made, right? It's like, it's pretty crazy.
I guess Kiss of the Damned is more centered on like eroticism than it is gore or horror,
right,
you know?
But I mean, that's what we're kind of talking about. It's kind of bringing vampires back to being sexually attractive, something that you can't resist. You know what I mean, when he looks at her in the video store, it feels like there's no choice after that moment. Which might
but he's
not be
got
about
his own
vampirism.
darkness.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people see the movie and go, "Oh, they fall in love so quickly," and it's like, yes, they do, and that's how I roll. So I don't know.
Right.
I'm making a movie. I can say that's legitimate because that's how I roll. But I mean, she's flashing back to him after they meet, and she's trying to resist him, and she's flashing to him, smiling, and him kissing her tenderly, and he's flashing to her, glaring at him and biting him. You know, so it's not just love; it's his, desire to transcend because he's had his ass kicked in his own life before trying to do something, artistic, and he had to end up becoming writer for hire. So he's just all too ready to recognize this girl and what she can offer him. And part of that is darkness.
Right. What about with the edit, Taylor? How much of that style was already on the page, like when they were planning? You have one of the things that they do in the film, which you should see, is there's kind of like the flash, I guess they're almost like flash inserts or flashbacks, but doesn't feel that literal, you know what I mean? Because they're so short and kind of like shock cuts of what actually happened.
So, I guess like I know Xan came to it with a lot of that already in mind, as far as having these cutaways back and forth, and I think a lot of it is just like the way that we would talk about things and how we want to piece things together too. And I know like going through, there was like all this, the movie's so opulent and elegant, like Xan said, but there was something about that harsh, like slamming to different parts of the movie or different flashbacks and stuff that felt kind of like aggressive and masculine at certain points. And there was this kind of weird juxtaposition of like the elegance and the beauty and stuff against these like hard cuts and like slamming things together and like having like not just hard picture cuts, but hard audio cuts and this kind of aggressive soundscape going over like beautiful opulent imagery that I think we just started doing it and it started working and it was really effective and started affecting us and like we just rolled with it and kept doing it.
Yeah, we got really fascinated how you could create a love story and like really both of us were revolted by any kind of sentimentality, which might be weird when you see a love story develop, but it was just we wanted hard cuts. We didn't want to know the moments where it got from here to here. It's just that's between them, and like you just have to arrive where you didn't see, and that takes away the sentimentality of it and just throws you into a situation like they're in the movie watching a movie, then they're in each other's arms, like and he's grabbing her and like touching her, and she's like really turned on, and then it's not about how did it get here, darling, and
that's pretty hard too. I mean, like as a kid, horror films when we were kids, and especially aimed at adolescent boys, right? But I remember like those are the first moments of being turned on. I even remember with some of the 80s horror stuff. This film was probably one of the first modern horror films where I would have felt that. Like there's a scene in a shower that's insanely hot, like ridiculous.
See, this is what you have to raise the bar so as a man you can feel the way you did when you were 12.
Exactly.
But there's a scene, there's a little scene where which I just think was genius because you created attraction where one person's trying to resist and hold back, and the other person, the one who's dangerous, is trying to hold back, and the one who isn't dangerous is trying to go in full steam.
You mean
when
at
they're
the door?
At the door, and the door is locked, and it's a fucking gorgeous scene.
Yeah.
And it would work in any movie, not non-horror, romance, Postman always rings twice, whatever, But it's got that kind of intensity, but having that undercurrent of vampirism really pushes it,
Oh, cool.
Which is great.
I like that too.
Yeah.
That was cool. But I think also in that scene too, she's a vampire, and but it's like a woman who doesn't really want to let somebody in past the superficial. She's very beautiful, so this guy's attracted to her, and she's like, if you really know me, aside from the superficial aspects, I'm insane, or I'm a killer, or I'm gonna mess up your life, and I'm gonna be unattractive when you really see my raw nature. And so that chain in the door is not just like, I'm not going to hurt you, but I don't want you to see me. I'd rather keep this fantasy that you saw me as this thing, which, happens in real life, sometimes with women. And he's just like super into the mystique of this chick.
Right.
And that happens with men too. They don't like to discuss it so much, but they like it to happen.
Right. And he's a writer too, which is an interesting layer to it, being a screenwriter too. Mm-hmm. I like the part where they discuss he used to do arty stuff. And it's action.
Scene with Michael Rappaport.
Yeah.
His agent, which is great.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. How have audiences reacted? Because you played at South by, right?
It's really love it or hate it. I mean, it's passionately hate it or pretty passionately love it.
Does the hate come from what they think it's going to be saying that it's?
I guess. I mean, it's healthy. I think. Mm-hmm. I certainly didn't set out to try to make a movie that was like so split and controversial. Some people like it. Of course, you want everyone to enjoy the joy that you had when you made the movie and what you did. But I mean, it's not an ass kisser movie to anything. It's not anything that's in vogue right now in any aspect of any movie making. So it's melodramatic and it's too much fun to be actually serious, and it's I don't know, it's slower paced and there's not a lot of blood in it. I mean, gore in it. It's not scary. But then again, it's a vampire movie. I don't really think I can think of a vampire movie that's really is scary. It's not about that. I don't really think vampire movies are scary anyway. So
I think there's blood though. I thought it was actually pretty bloody in the sense that without being a gore film, I think it was the right amount of blood for what's going on.
Even the blood is sort of sensual in the movie. You know?
But yeah, I don't think it's meant to be. It didn't seem like it was meant to be a scary horror film in that sense. It's more erotic and sensual, and something also. There's also an energy about it. I think. Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a strange film, but I never thought it was slow either.
Well, it's compared to nowadays how people edit movies, and for sure it takes its time.
Right.
I mean, that's not to say that it's boring. I don't think it's boring, but there will be people who are just like, why is this not going faster, and why is not more happening? And
weirdly enough, I thought the Twilight films were really slow, like slower than Gene Roland. I've seen all of them except the last one. I still haven't seen the last one.
Oh,
but
see, you didn't look into Edward Cullen's eyes.
I didn't.
That's it.
I was team whatever, Jacob. I don't know.
Jacob.
I don't think I'm team anyone. Though at least they got Bill Condon to direct the last couple. He's a good director. I mean, he was up until then. I don't know.
I only saw the first one, then I was like, "You're on your own."
Oh, really?
You little girl.
You got her sailing.
Some of my friends got cast as vampires in a few other films, and their careers have like totally taken off just by being like a background vampire in the Twilight films. Yeah.
Well, good for them.
Yeah, that's what I can say. I'm like, good for you.
We all have to work a little harder than that. But it's worth it.
And the film hasn't even come out yet. So what's
it's on VOD now, right? I think.
It's an ultra VOD model. You see,
I paid
ultra VOD
in the end.
Yeah, ultra VOD is this new model where it comes out on VOD before it comes out in theaters.
So is it also on? I know Amazon has that same model set up. Is it on Amazon ahead of time too?
It's on
Amazon,
it's on
iTunes,
all that.
Comcast,
and then it comes out theatrically in LA and New York on May 3rd, and then I don't know 15 cities after that. You know, hopefully, I don't know. I mean, the sound is so ridiculous when you hear it in a theater. It's like Batman.
Yeah.
And it makes, for a movie that's like contained in somewhat of a chamber piece of, it's a very weird contrast to hear like that kind of stuff. And it's just really pretty,
Yeah, it doesn't look like a cheap film at all. That's you saying it's low budget. It doesn't have. I mean, we see low budget. The group of us.
Yeah.
This looks like Terrence Malick kind of visually.
It wasn't that low budget, but it was for effects or things like that. Yeah, it was too low budget for that kind of stuff.
You're not using a camcorder from 1986 and having your dad hold it while you put zombie makeup on your friends. That's what we end up watching a lot of the time.
I want to ask Rob, what do you think about the vampire stuff, like the actually changes into becoming a vampire and that kind of stuff, just as a horror person? Were you?
I was really fascinated by the movie just because I thought it was very colorful and beautiful. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. And it's funny because you were saying before that you didn't think it had too many horror elements to it, I guess. But for me, because the vampire attacks were so sparse, I thought it made them stand out more. Mm-hmm. I mean, and they just had a tiny extra bit of nastiness, like the girl in the alley just kind of like pulling the flesh off that dude's neck.
Yeah, that was nice.
It's just like a nice little extra touch where it's like, ooh, that's gross.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be really hot and erotic at the same time. So so much so that I watched my screener at work and I had to like get up and kind of sort of close the door and be like, I don't know what my coworkers are going to think if they see me watching this. But no, I thought the horror aspect worked. Again, it's discussing this again. I kind of agree with you. I can't think of an example where I find vampires scary.
After Salem's Lot, when I was a kid, I can't do it.
We were kids. I don't know if that would affect me the same way now.
Yeah, I mean, like Lost Boys had terrifying moments when I was 10, but it doesn't now. And I think of vampire films that I like, but again, it's like even Martin was one of my favorite ones when I was a kid, but I was never scared by it. And that's a bloody little film.
The ending scared me more than anything.
Yeah.
And that was violence against Martin.
Yeah.
So.
It does feel like to make a scary vampire now, it would be more like a person who is just so convinced that they are this romantic Harlequin character, but really they're just like in that you see what they imagine being these beatific scenes of love and lust, and what's really happening is a guy dragging a woman down an alley and like biting her until she's dead. That would be scary if it's just a maniac kind of perspective. But
do have to say, looking over my list that I wrote this morning, Let the Right One In did have a couple of chilling moments for me.
It's a great film.
Same if you've seen the Korean film from 2009, Thirst.
I was going to mention that.
Had some
Park Chan-wook.
had some chilling moments as well. But it's Park Chan-wook, and he puts those in everything he does. He could make like a Tide commercial, and it would scare me.
But it was also a comedy, right? Like it felt like it was also a comedy.
It was. It had some moments.
Which one? Thirst?
No, wait. Thirst is like far.
I didn't find it.
I thought it was funny. I thought it was fun. It had the funny ending when they're on the car and the daylight, right? That one.
Yeah, but I didn't find that
I
funny.
thought it
was yeah.
I thought the whole film was a comedy.
Have you seen that one? I love that movie, Thirst, the Korean one.
No.
Apparently, it's a very scary comedy.
Okay, well, I want to check it out.
It's like Fright Night 3.
Yeah, well, it's a priest who gets a blood transfusion, and that's how he becomes a vampire. But I like it because
the
it's
Immaculate Conception.
Oh my God. And then his obsession with this girl that he grew up with her, right?
They knew each other from way back. So
What's not? You know why vampire movies aren't scary? Because when you bite someone, they don't die.
Right.
You know, they just get to live forever and be like young and beautiful.
Right, so there's not much at stake. Oh, unless they get ripped apart like yours did. Most of those guys didn't.
Even when, there's always an alluring element to being a vampire.
Right.
Like, I can live forever. I can leap over buildings. I can fly. I can turn into a bat. I think that at most point in people's lives, they've thought, it'd be kind of cool to be a vampire.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's not the end of the world. No pun intended.
Right.
Unless it's Last Man on
never
Earth.
end.
And then it is.
Yeah, that was a vampire film too.
That's what.
Yeah.
That was the joke.
Yeah. Too dry for me.
Thank
Just
you,
too dry.
Elric.
What was the other one called? Omega Man.
Omega Man and I Am Legend.
Right.
All of which were nowhere as near as the book. Nowhere near as good as the book.
Yeah,
There's
cool.
the Asylum one, I Am Omega, which just makes me laugh. That's the ripoff movie.
Is that real?
It's like Snakes on a Train.
Yeah, it's the same company.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Briefly, before we move on to other vampire movies, if that's what we're doing, I actually wanted to bring up the Z Channel documentary, which I enjoyed immensely.
Yeah, it's great.
Actually, my friend Sean Keller, who listens, here's a drop out to you.
Hi,
He's
Sean
the one
Keller.
that introduced me to it.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because I was telling Rebekah about it because she hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Because, we're from New York, so I had never heard of the Z Channel because it seemed like primarily an LA-based thing.
Yeah, only 213. Only.
That's crazy.
But yeah, have you seen it yet?
Oh yeah, no. We met briefly before in the Jump Cut a couple weeks ago, and that film I saw it when it came out in New Zealand, and it blew me away because it had a lot of clips of. It was like one of the first documentaries with lots of clips that turned me onto films I hadn't seen. Usually it's like, I've seen all that stuff. And this was like, oh, wow, I didn't even know about that film. And then I'd look it up. But also had this really interesting story that I had never heard of the channel.
What was the year that Z Channel came out?
I think this guy, Jerry Harvey, who was the subject of this, came there and sort of turbo-drived it from where it was in 1980.
Wow.
And I think it went from 80 to 88. And there was no cable, really, at that time. In the beginning of it. And then there was no video stores in the beginning of that time. So... But it was in LA, so all the people who voted for all these influential people in the business would discover directors and movies, and it made a lot of people's career. But aside from that, the greatest thing about Z Channel to me is that we would have a slasher movie and like a Bergman movie, and some German lesbian silent movie and a kung fu movie, all in the same festival. Like they'd have a theme, something to do back to school or something, and they'd link all these movies into this thing. So it wasn't about this whole idea of having an identity and being officially, intellectual or I only like this or that. And all these people would see all these movies, the guys who bagged your groceries at the market would have seen a movie that they would never have access to now and love it. And it's just all movies belong to all people. And
that's cool.
There was none of this clicky, put your own identity into everyone just got out of every movie what they responded to, and that was the dopest thing.
I imagine this was an important influence on you. To do a documentary about it, obviously, how pivotal was Z Channel to you when it was around?
It started. I was always getting punished for going to the punk rock clubs, and those days you could go, no age limits, and so I was always getting grounded, and so we all had Z Channel in our rooms, and it was on all day, even if you'd leave the room, it was just on in everybody's room because that's how it was. Just it's indescribable what it meant or how it was. But I was 12 and 13, and this is where I started getting into European chicks, and you see people like huge full Euro bushes for the first time. You're like, what? And just seriously, you're just. You get really obsessed with this weird, secret, intense life of adults and what they do and their affairs and their murders and their this and that. Those things are really great. And seeing all those war movies about World War II from all those directors, the most gruesome, and then these sadist movies. And just it's something probably I shouldn't have seen at that age, but I feel great. I mean, I don't feel disturbed. I feel really happy about it.
That's what we were all talking about VHS last week, and our nostalgia, and we all feel similarly. I think that was our Z channel. I guess was the video store back then, but
Well, it's kind of weird that in LA they create a cable channel, one of the first ones, and it's like art films. In New York, when they created our first cable channel, Robin Bird. Do you remember Robin Bird?
No.
How do you not remember Robin Bird was a porn star who had a show on the basic cable channel in New York. It was like the first ever show, and it became incredibly popular. And she always used to sing the song, "Babe, I Want to Bang Your Box." She'd have porn stars on. They would do strip teases. It was like, and it was basic cable, but it was on from like early 80s to late 80s. And now they have a clip show on called Bird Brains. Still plays in New York. How did you miss this, Rob? There was naked people on your television when you were a kid.
I guess I wasn't that slick.
Wasn't there something called Prism in New York that was kind of cool?
I haven't seen Prism. We do. It's on now, but when I left New York a couple of years ago, there was this guy who was very, very Brooklyn who would come on and predict your future. And then he would dance around to like hit techno music. So he'd be like, "Sagittarius, don't go out this week." And then this techno music would kick in. He was pretty awesome. So, but yeah, that's what we get now. We don't get art house films.
now there's too many channels, right? Nothing on. Like it's just hundreds of channels where you're just like mindlessly, there's nothing there, you know?
I know.
It's tough.
It's really sad because, you say you were into videos and stuff, and that's great. But I mean, Z Channel was like a DJ.
Curated. Yeah, curated.
Like it was, and you were going to see things you never knew you wanted, and combinations of things, and get exposed and draw the links between all these sort of movies you shouldn't like if you like this kind of movie. It was really good for the brain and the soul.
Well, that's something I've often thought, when you say it, it sounds pretentious, but I think at the heart of it, it's true. I feel like if a lot of horror people who want to grow up and make horror films were forced to watch certain art films, and if a lot of art filmmakers were made to watch entertaining, exciting movies, the result would be better in filmmaking all around. Because there's sometimes people just go too far down one rabbit hole, and it kind of becomes generic. Anything, I mean, art films can be generic as anything.
And they start anticipating what the audience wants, and when that happens, it's just it's not bad. It's just you can do something more individual if you allow yourself to take from different influences and respond to what you respond to. Not to, I'm going to take from different influences, that's going to be my style, but to actually allow yourself to respond to different things. You can incorporate things into a movie, and it's not just the same thing all the time.
Does that also, because you've acted as well in other people's films?
I don't know why people think that. I think that someone, like my brother, said that I acted in Alpha Dog on IMDb, or somebody put that on it. It's just like, I did not.
But you were on sets a lot, right? Like growing up?
I mean, because I lived in the house.
Right, because you were in the house where stuff's happening.
Making sandwiches for like 40, but I wasn't like a glamorous. Wouldn't have gone to the set.
Right. You weren't invited. So you're never on the actual set. You weren't on The Fury. But you were at home.
You know what? I was on The Fury.
Oh, so now we have a De Palma.
I did. Yes, De Palma. Yeah. The ultimate BD. De Palma BDP. I visited my dad for 2 weeks in Chicago. Yeah.
I lived right next to that opening shot on the lake where they're the summer shot.
No way.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's an interesting little film. But yeah,
The Fury's awesome.
Your dad doesn't end up in a good place in that movie. That's probably the most brutal end to any character I've ever just. But being on sets, did you learn anything about improvisation, just like kind of rolling with it, or is that more later?
Anytime I was ever on a set, I was not paying attention to anything like that. I'm an idiot to think that I grew up with my dad and just was like, whatever, like could not care less. Right. Or just, went to like the set where Brian De Palma was directing, and I was just playing cards with the Teamsters and just like not paying attention. It's stupid. It's one of the things that drives me crazy. But then again, whatever. I wasn't like some like eager little freaky child trying to suck all the ideas out of the maestros.
Right. That's probably healthy, though, I think.
That would have been really creepy.
That could be your next vampire film.
Totally.
I like
it
that.
gives new definition to a Hollywood vampire film. Just like a child who's already so jacked up on trying to steal other people's ideas.
That can't be copied if you're listening right now. Do you have other genre things you'd like to do? I mean, you obviously have to...
Yeah, the next one I'm making is a genre thing.
Oh, really? Cool.
It's a genre, but it's not...
It's not go yet.
It's more sci-fi.
Oh, cool.
No, it's not go yet.
Okay.
And it probably never will be because it's batshit crazy.
I mean, like in talking about industry stuff, like for people who don't know, like how much rides on a career, like between the period now and when it actually comes out and how it's received, how important is that to just getting the next thing made? Or can you get or is it important to try to get a deal made before that comes out to make
know
another
what?
film?
I'm so dumb. I mean, I'm really bad at this because I just don't care to think. I'm so not ambitious. It took me 45 years to make a narrative film because I was just like, whatever, you know. I mean, I wasn't whatever. I was really trying, but the things I wanted to do were not necessarily things that people wanted to give me money for. So I don't know. All I think about is the project itself.
Right.
And I think, well, if it's that great, then of course it's going to get made. But, you know, I never learned my lesson because sometimes you don't get it made. But I don't care. I can't think about that. It bores me. I just want to think about the project.
In other words, a creative. That's the problem I have. I've met some filmmakers who are like, I should have probably gotten a manager before this film came out, and then the film comes out and tanked, and they're like, I can't work now. And you're like, well, I don't know. The business side's a mystery.
You know what? You can do anything you want if you really, if you really want to do it.
Right.
There's just no excuse, you know?
Well, and also now you have this powerful film that's already made now. Like before that, you hadn't yet to make a major narrative film, right? So now you have. And it's a great film.
I still think about these movies like people are just like, this sucks, and other people are like, I love this, but I don't know which one of those stands, and I don't know. I have no idea what my future holds. I only pray every day that I'm jacked up and excited about some idea that I want to do next. That's all I could hope for.
This sounds good to me. Are you jacked up? Is everyone jacked up?
I'm jacked.
I'm totally jacked.
Jackie Gleason.
We have to make sure before we get this down, because we don't want to miss this. When will people see this? Just one final reminder. It's on video on demand right now, which I saw and actually thought it was perfect.
Video on demand.
Yeah, I thought it was actually great.
Ultra.
Seeing it like that. I didn't have problems with sound. That's why I didn't want to watch on my computer, because the link we were having trouble with. But I also just, probably you found it's kind of small and...
No, I had headphones on and I had it on a big screen.
Yeah, I watched it on a computer and it still looked beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. I mean, I don't think anybody knows that this movie exists except for some like people who love horror movies, which is funny because I don't know if it is even a horror movie, but people have been really cool and nice. And I think that horror movies have a huge range of what they are and what's beautiful in them. There's just a giant range, and I'm really happy, and I've loved every second of being involved in this world, but nobody really knows about the movie outside of that, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, hopefully it'll change, as you get closer to the date, and people, I don't know, people will tweet.
It will or it won't.
It's all about the tweets.
It lives.
But as long as you've turned on a few people to it, that's the thing. I was really excited after I saw that film, and I was nervous, just like you wrote me an email saying, I wonder if he won't like it. And I was thinking, even when I was starting, when I read a lot of the Jean Roland things, I was going, is it just going to be like copying that and slow? And then I found it really vibrant. I thought it moved, and it was sexy, and it was really well made, and that was exciting afterwards. I was like, and the editing and the cinematography were amazing,
Yeah.
So to me, that's what more do you want?
Well, I love
that should be enough to make another movie right there.
Yeah. When you watch as many of these movies as we do on a regular basis, it's just like there are the horror fans that just want the same old thing.
Right.
But then there's people like us that kind of want to be challenged and see something just a little bit different.
Completely.
So,
And that's where we get is we want to see something that kind of makes us go, I didn't see that before.
So
they didn't just chop off some heads.
Yeah.
So
And I do think for the personal is really important. Something the two things I've always felt are missing in the last 10 years are the fantastic, which is kind of like the 80s did all this kind of fantastic and out there stuff, and the personal. I feel like you inject some personal, just even if it's minor, it's just under the current, whether it's relationship stuff, it will always elevate it just above that stuff that's going straight to video, where the teenagers are doing whatever they're doing and being slashed. It's like, yeah, but if you added a little more of your experience, I don't know, it doesn't have to be a generic genre. It just doesn't. It just, it's got so many things going for it on the aesthetic and emotive level. I don't know. I feel like I've talked this whole episode because you guys are so just looking at me like, hey, why don't you keep talking?
You are quite eloquent.
It's the accent,
it sounds
hearing the
good.
accent.
All right.
So we've got some news this week too.
Okay.
News.
You're
You guys
pregnant
mind?
again.
No,
Oh, boy.
not for a long time. Give me no. Anyways, Zombieland, the TV series trailer was released onto, actually not just the trailer, the whole series was released onto Amazon this week for free. So you can check it out.
They pulled it right away, though.
They
today. They said the episode went up, and then when everyone went to take a look for the episode, the trailer was there, and then the trailer disappeared.
I watched the episode.
Did you?
Yeah.
I watched the trailer, and
kind of
not good.
It's tongue in cheeky.
Sorry to say.
Yeah, it was very kind of, where Zombieland was smart. This one was very kind of over the top, hammy. At least that's how I saw it.
You know what? Judging from the trailer, and I don't want to discredit the actors in it. It's like me and my coworker were watching it, and we're like, all right, I guess I can handle that these other people are playing them, except like the Woody Harrelson guy is nothing like Woody Harrelson.
Not a
and
bit.
That's just
He
way too
loses the
distracting.
cool edge. Instead, he's very kind of like buffooning.
Yeah, that's the one bit where I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Was he meant to be imitating that character?
I mean, they're all the
that's
same
always dead.
characters. It like takes place after the
bad
movie,
idea.
but it's all people that you don't recognize.
You can't
But
emulate
whereas,
things.
Woody Harrelson has this kind of cool edge to him. The guy that they get, he was kind of just schlubby.
Who apparently was the writer's original choice. Or
Really?
Something like that, yeah.
I had no idea.
And it was directed by the guy that did Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
So
He
it's that
directed the
same
pilot.
kind of humor of, body parts, giant geysers of blood.
Right, broad
and
comedy.
Yeah, a lot of like really quick little one-liners that just kind of, everybody has a quip.
There's no Eric Red. We need more Eric Red
Yeah.
writing in the Vampire.
So I don't know how I'm feeling about it. But for me, it drew zombies down.
Yeah.
So, Hemlock Grove also released, and I haven't seen it yet, but I checked out the Red Band trailer, which looks pretty kick-ass. I mean, it's got a lot of blood, a lot of body parts flying, some lesbians in it.
And it's free on Netflix once
It's
it comes
free
out.
on
Yeah.
Netflix. I have not seen it yet, but it has not gotten good reviews so far.
Really?
At
Yeah, I'm
least-
gonna marathon it. I think it goes live the 19th,
Yeah.
which is by the time people hear this.
I read...
And my birthday.
Oh, yeah.
I
You'll
read
hear
the
this on my
Vari-
birthday.
Oh, yeah, it is on your birthday.
Yeah.
Celebrate.
Happy birthday, Elric.
Yeah.
Watch Hemlock Grove.
Watch Hemlock Grove to celebrate
Elric's
Robe.
birthday.
Well, according to Variety, it won't be a very happy birthday then. But that could just be the Variety review. I read a couple of them, and all of them were kind of negative, saying, it's not bad made, but it's not breaking any new ground as far as werewolves go.
Have they ever given Eli Roth a good review? Come on.
This is true. Well, what did I say? Rapey and boring? That was in regards
That was
to Aftershock.
Yeah.
Probably if he made more interesting films, I think the reviewers would be kinder. But that's just me. I find his stuff like the first 20 minutes will be interesting, and then the rest of the movie happens. And you're
I
like,
don't know. I really liked Cabin Fever, and then Hostel. I was like, okay, I'm with you. And then after they actually made it to the hostel, and in Hostel, I was so bored because then it was like we left the whorehouse, and then it's just tie him to a chair and poke him for a while.
Yeah,
I was so
yeah.
bored by it. So
It really is hard to watch people it's not hard. Like, I don't suffer watching people being tortured. It's boring. It's like I don't feel it. If I don't feel the pain they're feeling, I don't care. Whereas I did think when we were talking about Evil Dead last week, it was like I felt some of those hits. I felt people hitting the toilet. And it's like,
the
ooh, that
toilet
hurt.
hit was a big one. The
So,
burns in the bathroom
yeah.
was a big one for me.
So it's like trying to get people caught up into your film rather than just watching your film distance. You know?
Gouging out an eyeball tied to a chair in Hostel.
Yeah,
I didn't connect.
I like the ending a lot of Hostel. But that's because when that came out, it reminded me stylistically of a lot of like the Korean revenge movies.
Actually, yeah, I could
Because
see
like
that.
the last like 20 minutes just completely flips, and it's like the J. Hernandez.
That's right. Yeah,
character
no, the end is actually pretty fun.
unleashes some unholy vengeance on those people.
Yeah.
And I dig that. I love revenge movies.
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
all
Big
for it.
revenge film. Yeah.
And then also, Rob and I were discussing this before the show started. Bobcat Goldthwait's new Bigfoot film, Willow Creek. I am fucking
I'm
excited
so
for this.
in. I am so in.
I don't even understand the last
It
sentence
doesn't-
that came out of your mouth.
Goldthwait's
I don't-
Bigfoot film.
No, still don't
Willow
get it.
Creek.
He is the master of the black comedy.
Yeah.
Everything he's been making, I love.
Right.
And I was telling Rebekah I was lucky enough to bump into him through a mutual friend and chit chat.
Which is crazy. It wasn't like an interview. It was just like a,
No.
hey, you're Bobcat.
And
hey,
I
I'm Rob.
thought he was kidding. He's like, yeah, I just made a found footage Bigfoot horror movie. And I'm like,
Wow.
I'm in. Whatever you made,
Check
I will
out the
watch
poster
it.
for this. It's like my
Posters
favorite
are rad.
poster of the year.
That's cool.
Yeah.
He's good. What's the film you made with Rob Williams? It was good.
World's Greatest Dad.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, it's pretty interesting
I
stuff.
don't like God Bless America quite a bit.
Yeah, it's fun. Do we know anything about the release date for Willow Creek?
No, it's premiering at some festival at the end of April, but I forget which one. And then I guess there'll
need
be
to
more
go
of a
to
battle
that.
plan. Yeah.
And speaking of art horror, if we want to call it that,
It's a Bigfoot film. Give me a break.
Yeah, no, a certain filmmaker has a movie coming out this Friday who had carte blanche to do anything he wanted, and this is the movie he made called Lords of Salem.
Oh, yeah.
Robert Zombie
and Rob Galluzzo.
Rob's seen it and been holding back his putrid and bile.
Let's wait till it's out.
Yeah, he's gonna wait. I haven't seen it yet, but apparently this is Rob. He had complete control. He could do within a budget. He was told by the producer, you can kind of do anything.
That's a whole other episode.
Wow, I have not seen it yet, but all of the Fango staff has been like, "Oh my God, it's brilliant! It's Jodorowsky meets Argento meets just God." And I
question your staff there. No,
what is God's filmmaking
Don't you
style?
write for
Just
us occasionally,
omniscient,
Rob?
like really boring. Just camera view from up here. This is God. This is my filmmaking style. I don't know.
And then there's Jodorowsky. So.
Wait, he's like Jodorowsky?
It's he let his Kubrick, Jodorowsky, and Polanski influence fly on.
But that sells me. Like you're,
I know,
you're
you say that in a sneer.
They're like
You just
three of my
made
favorite
favorite
filmmakers.
film ever.
Do you like those other directors?
Yeah, no, I do a lot. I do a lot.
So
And
it's
I-
like
and-
all of that and
it-
witches.
And I like Rob Zombie. You know what? I was having a conversation with somebody that will remain nameless, but I don't mind offending people. So he's like, you know what? It's like Eli Roth and Rob Zombie. It's like Rob Zombie. I love the guy. I love the person. I love the interview. And I go into his movies wanting to love them and end up not liking them at all. Whereas Eli Roth, it's the complete opposite. I just don't like the person at all. And then he'll make like an R. It's like, oh shit, why did he make he made a decent movie? So yeah,
That's interesting. Huh.
that's how I feel about it. I want to like Rob Zombie's movies a lot more.
But it'll be interesting to see. Do you think this film, because it looked real? If you should check out the trailer when you get home. It
trailer
looks
looks-
really
yeah.
artistic.
It looks pretty.
It's crazy.
It really
Isn't there
does.
two different trailers? One's like artistic and one's like not artistic.
Oh, I don't know. I've only
I'm
seen
sure
it.
that's a marketing
Probably.
move.
It didn't look very narrative. It didn't look like I don't know what goes on in it particularly.
The
but-
narrative, the narrative is. I mean, I guess that's the infuriating part.
right?
Is it looks like there could be a story there, but it just gets thrown right out the window.
But do you think his kind of fan base will just be totally alienated by it?
His fan base is going to love it no matter what.
Oh, really?
I've
Okay.
already seen them like Scott Weinberg reviewed it for FearNet, and of course, and he very openly is like, "Hey, I don't like any of his movies thus far. This is the one that I sort of almost liked, but not really." And they just like turn on him immediately. It's like you haven't even seen the movie, and they're like, "Oh, you're not giving Rob Jobs."
Oh, okay, right. That's
Wow.
But it's
That's
got
really
witches.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. Hey,
Witches is like, how do you? I mean, witches.
yeah. There's a lot of cool things in it, but I don't know if that makes a great movie.
Oh,
How can I put it that way?
Yeah, no,
I'm
you're right.
gonna check it out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I need to see
I
this
would
now.
love to hear what everyone thinks about it, honestly.
I'm actually more intrigued now that Rob doesn't like it. Before I was like, okay, I'm there. But now I'm like, I have to see this.
Yeah.
So,
I'll
Well-
put it this way: somebody offered me a free ticket to see it Sunday, and I'm like, nope, can't sit through it again.
Well, I know tomorrow night is horror trivia night, and it opens at midnight tomorrow night. And I know that a chunk of the horror trivia crowd will be going to midnight
They
shows.
should get.
Unfortunately, there's some at 10 and they can't go because they'll still be at Jump Cut.
Oh, no.
We have a horror trivia that if you ever get bored. Actually, I'll put up the
I'm
poster.
gonna lose that game.
Yeah. We'll put up the poster tomorrow. Or maybe we should do the giveaway of the poster, but then I won't have it anymore. But we'll
Whatever. Let it take its course.
we'll give it to the fans. But yeah, but I've been also doing a lot of short viewing this week because we've got a horror short film night Jump Cut on Sunday.
I hear there's a really good one playing.
Yeah, well, hopefully your short's going to get done
Did you
by
make
then.
a short?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I made a couple.
made a couple, but
my husband's at home doing some final tweaks
It
on
needs
the
it
editing
needed
right
some
now.
re-editing. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't happy, and neither was my awesome producer Elric. So we are tweaking right as I speak.
Yeah.
I think doing short horror movies is super cool idea.
I
Yeah.
love it so much more
Love.
than making long films. Like I get frustrated whenever I have to think about how to scare somebody for an hour and a half, but 2 minutes I got down pat. So,
Yeah, no, it's just a great exercise, filmmaking
it is.
exercise to try to do something in a short time frame.
and I'm in, I'm out. I don't have to get frustrated or fed up with it or bored by it. It's like a weekend, and then we come back and tweak and edit. But yeah,
It's fun programming
It's
too
good.
because you
want to
go
do
comedy
that. I
horror.
want to make a short horror, like a 5-minute.
Did you make
Do
shorts
it.
before the feature or not?
I
Had you
mean,
made shorts?
I wouldn't call them shorts. I would call them arts and crafts and like my friends and family on
Yeah.
weekends on like home movie cameras.
those are shorts.
Yeah.
All of these get put together.
If you suffered, they were filmed. Right?
I didn't. I was
Okay, then
just
they're
drunk
not
the
short.
whole time.
No, most of even like the professional filmmakers I know that make shorts, when they do it, it's very much like, hey, you want to hold a camera for the weekend? I'll buy you a beer at the end of it. And that's just the way that shorts are, which I think is why I like them so much more, is at the end of the night, you can have some,
But you can also give all you've got for like 2 or 3. That's the cool thing. When you're directing a short, you can say to the people around you, hey, we were only doing this for 2 days. Give it everything. When you're shooting for 45 days, you can see how...
I have to pay people
when
then.
there's not much money, you can see how it runs out of steam. It's tough.
Well, you got to get people who there are actually people who like to work.
Yeah.
Especially if it's good and what they do is valued.
Right.
We actually have a really good thing going in the horror community where it's very much like, you work on my short this weekend. Okay, you know what? I'll hold a boom mic for you next weekend. And it's just like we kind of have this good camaraderie going where I know about 6 people who owe me on my next film. Right. So
yeah, well, that's what you're interested in. That's what they're interested in.
Yeah. It's creating like a community. It's cool.
Yeah.
So make shorts.
Yeah, make films.
Make films. Do it.
Make sure it's not war.
Yeah.
Come to the Jump Cut on Sunday for the short
if you're
festival.
around, come down.
May 3rd, Kiss the Dam. Check it out. Or check it out on VOD right now.
And if you can, see Lords of Salem and let us know what you think on our Facebook page. Plug the Facebook page, boys.
Yeah, I like
Facebook, yeah.
Listen, Stoker. Did you see Stoker by chance?
Yes.
Yeah, did you like it or not?
Wait, what?
With that, I'm going to ask you after we're off air. No, Stoker, did you see that new film, Stoker? It's a new film, not an old one.
No, I didn't.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just very, I think, visually beautiful.
I was hoping that was going to be her review. Wait,
It's worth saying. It's visually. I was going to say, well, those are Kiss of the Dam and Stoker to me are like the most kind of visually sumptuous films I've seen this year. I like both.
Both set in giant estates.
Yeah, exactly. And there are some similarities, but not tonally.
Oh no, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
I got to see Stoker. I forgot to mention that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
It's good. Did you like it?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it's Park Chan-wook, the director.
Who did
Nicole
Thirst?
Kidman. It's a very dark, strange thriller, but kind of what's the Hitchcock film that it's more or less where the uncle moves in?
Uncle Charlie.
Yeah, Uncle Charlie. Shadow of a Doubt. All right. Anyway, we're rambling. So if you're listening, check it out on video on demand. I really, really enjoyed it, and so hopefully you will too. And if you don't, tell us why you don't.
Yeah. And if you don't, fuck off.
Yeah. Remember,
I'm totally kidding. It's a free country. That's a great thing.
Xan will piss on your grave.
Well,
if you don't like your film.
I'm dark, baby.
They're my words. Thanks so much for coming on, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank you, guys.
And we will be back next week with mystery guests and all sorts of good stuff.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yep. Good night, all.
Thanks.